Okay, so let's start. So we're going into chapter 7. So this is about welfare. So we're talking about consumer surplus, producer surplus, and total surplus, and why economists think it's good to have the market. So yeah, as I said, the main topics are on consumer surplus and producer surplus. And does the market give you a good outcome? Here there is a normative judgment here, because we have something that we deem as good or bad, and then we'll see if markets can improve. Okay, so this is a chapter on what we call welfare economics. We're talking about a resource allocation. So how much a good is produced, which producer is going to produce it, which consumer is going to consume it. So it's really about production and consumption. So who produces how much and who gets it. So that's what we concern of resource allocation. So the question is, how does these different resource allocation choices affect the economic well-being? So here we have an assumption on economic well-being, and we'll say, based on this measurement or this criteria, is this outcome better than the other? So, and we will look at the conclusion. To skip way ahead, the equilibrium that we talked about in chapter 4 basically maximizes what we call total benefit of the buyers and sellers. So in that sense, it's good. I mean, because it's going to maximize the total benefit. But of course, here you have to think about how do you define benefits and so on. All right, so we start with consumer surplus. Consumer surplus is your willingness to pay. So that's how much you're willing to pay to acquire this good. This is the maximum. It's your buyer's value, how much you value this good. So the consumer surplus is the willingness to pay minus the price you pay. So that's your gains from trade. Yeah, so if you participate in the market, instead of trying to get this or not getting this or getting this at a higher price, you can buy this product at this market price. And because you value this product higher than the market price, so there is a gain from trade. So this is what we call consumer surplus. All right, so suppose you work part-time at a local store selling secondhand iPads. The new iPad mini just came out. So now your store is clearing up the secondhand refurbished iPad mini 5 because 6 is coming up. Oh, by the way, I love the purple one. So yeah, okay, and each of your roommates wants to buy an iPad mini 5. Their willingness to pay is given in the table as follows. So Alexi has a willingness to pay of 15,000 NT dollars, Kelly 10,500, Quinn 18,000 NT dollars, and Jameer 7,500. So the question is, if the sales price is $12,000, who will buy an iPad and at what quantity demanded? Okay, so let's join the quiz. So if the sales price is $12,000, who will buy an iPad? One thing to note is that it could be more than one. Okay, time's up. So we see a lot of you say Alexi, a lot of you say Quinn, and some say Kelly and Jameer. And yes, the answer is Alexis and Quinn. So these two people are going to buy the iPad. Okay, and what is the quantity demanded? Okay, time's up. So let's look at your answers. Majority of you say 2, some of you say 1, because there are 2 people. Yeah, so and 2 is the answer. We saw the two people in part 1. So let's take a look. So if the sales price is $12,000, so Alexis and Quinn, they have a willingness to pay above the sales price, so they will buy the iPad mini. But Kelly and Jameer have a willingness to pay below that, so they would not buy, because 2 of the people are willing to buy, so the quantity demanded is 2 at this price. Let's take a look. So you can derive the demand schedule. So when the price of an iPad mini is above $18,000, nobody's going to buy. If it's between $15,000 and $18,000, Quinn is going to buy, so the quantity demanded is 1. And if you go down to below $15,000, quantity demanded becomes 2. If you go below $10,500, then the quantity demand will be 3, and so on. You can actually plot this. So if it's 18,000 or above, nobody wants to buy, quantity demand is 0. If you go down below 18,000, quantity demanded is 1 because 1 person is buying. And then when you go below 15,000, not only Quinn, but also Alexis is going to buy, so quantity demanded is 2. And then when you go beyond 10,500, you would get a third buyer, so quantity demanded is 3. And when you drop below 7,500, then all 4 of your roommates are going to buy, so quantity demanded is 4. So this is your demand curve. What's interesting here is that unlike the demand curve that you saw in chapter 4, this demand curve is like a staircase. It has steps. And actually, each step represents 1 buyer. But what this means is that if you have a lot of buyers, and if you scale out, it looks like a smooth curve. So in that sense, usually we draw a straight line because we're thinking about a huge market where you have a lot of buyers, and so these steps are very tiny. Okay, so at any quantity, the height of the demand curve gives you the willingness to pay of that marginal buyer. What that means is that it's the marginal buyer because if the price goes above that price, then this buyer will leave the market because it's above his or her willingness to pay. So at the very top, you see Quinn's willingness to pay at 18,000, and then you see Alexis' willingness to pay at 15,000, and then the next step is Kelly's willingness to pay at 10,500, and then you can go down to Jameer's willingness to pay at 7,500. So now you can use this information to calculate consumer surplus. Consumer surplus is the willingness to pay minus the price. So suppose the price of the iPad mini is $15,600. Quinn's consumer surplus is her willingness to pay minus the market price. So 18,000 minus 15,600. So you get 2,400 in terms of consumer surplus. And then nobody else is going to buy at the price of 15,600 because it's above everybody else's willingness to pay. So total consumer surplus is just Quinn's consumer surplus, which is 2,400. So you can graph this over here. So at the very high price of 15,600, there's Quinn's consumer surplus, and that's the total surplus. Suppose the price drops. Let's see what happens. So suppose the price drops to 13,200. So now Quinn's consumer surplus is 18,000 minus the new price, 13,200. So she gets $4,800 in terms of consumer surplus. And then Alexis is also going to buy. So she has a consumer surplus of 15,000 minus the market price, so $1,800. So now the total surplus is the sum of the two, so you get a total surplus of $6,600. One thing I should note here is that here we are assuming that the consumer can determine a willingness to pay. And that's something that he or she is sure about. And of course, that means that you have to convert the value of a product or a service into a dollar amount. This is an assumption. Some people would say, oh no, life is priceless, so I cannot value a person's life. Yeah, so there is an assumption here, or at some sense, it is a value judgment that I can assign a dollar amount to everything. If you think of, like, say, an iPad mini, maybe you can try to ask yourself, yeah, what is your willingness to pay to buy a new iPad mini or a refurbished iPad mini? But if you're talking about, like, say, what's your value to protect the environment? What's your willingness to pay for that? Now it may be a little bit more difficult to answer. But here we are making this assumption, and given this assumption, we use this to calculate consumer surplus. Okay, so given any market price, the total consumer surplus is you sum up individual consumer surpluses, all of the buyers. And so it's the area that's below the market demand curve, but above the price. And because the height of the demand curve is the marginal buyer value, or his willingness to pay, and if you minus the price, then of course that's that buyer's consumer surplus, and you have to add all of that up for the whole area. All right, so if you think of like a huge market where you have a lot of buyers, so here you have a demand for t-shirt, which is a straight line. So at quantity equals to 5, the marginal buyer has a willingness to pay of $500 for a t-shirt. And suppose the price is $300, this person's consumer surplus is $200. So if you think of, say, the price is $300, that price quantity demanded is 15. So the consumer surplus is the area that's below the demand curve but above the price from 0 to quantity demanded of 15. So if you remember how to calculate, actually that's why we like to have a straight line, because then you have a triangle here. So the area of a triangle is the base times the height divided by 2. So you have a height of 600 minus 300, so $300. You multiply that by a quantity demanded of 15 divided by 2, then so the consumer surplus for this market is 2,250. And if the prices go up, suppose now the price is $400 per t-shirt. Actually, I'm not sure if you have been asked to buy a t-shirt for your department or your college or for the university. Yeah, prices fluctuate. And now the consumer surplus shrinks, because if the price is 400, quantity demanded drops to 10. So now the height is only $200 multiplied by 10 divided by 2, you get only $1,000 in terms of consumer surplus. So you see that at different prices, consumer surplus would change. And it would change for two reasons. Number one is some buyers leave the market because the new price is above his or her willingness to pay. So if my willingness to pay is between $400 and $300, at the price of $300, I would buy. But if the price is $400, then I say, no way. I don't want to buy this NTU t-shirt or your favorite department's t-shirt. But the other reason why consumer surplus drops is even if I'm still buying the t-shirt, now I'm paying a higher price. Because for me, my consumer surplus is my willingness to pay minus the price I pay. So if I pay more, then my consumer surplus shrinks. All right, so now let's try to do a little quiz. So here is a demand curve for another market. Find the marginal buyers willing to pay at $10, willingness to pay at quantity equals to 10. B, find the total consumer surplus for the price of $300. And then C, suppose now the price is going to drop to $200. How much will the consumer surplus increase because of either buyers entering the market or existing buyers paying a lower price? All right, so let's prepare. Part A, find the marginal buyer's willingness to pay when quantity demanded is equal to 10. Okay, so time's up. Let's take a look. So a lot of your answers are 300. And yes, the answer is 300. Next one, find the total consumer surplus when the price is $300. Okay, so majority of you say $500, and it is $500. Let's take a look. So what is the marginal buyer's willingness to pay at the quantity of 10? So if you go down from quantity equals to 10, you go all the way up to the demand curve, you see that the marginal buyer has a willingness to pay of $300. And so what is the total consumer surplus at the price of 300? So the height is 400 minus 300, so that's $100 multiplied by 10 divided by 2, so it's $500. Okay, now let's go to part C. So suppose the price drops to $200. How much will consumer surplus increase due to buyers entering the market? So it was $300, now it's dropped to $200. And so the question is, what is the total consumer surplus that's increased because new buyers are coming in? Okay, so a lot of you say 500, and it is 500. So if you got this wrong, you can wait for the answers. So now, how much will consumer surplus increase because existing buyers are paying a lower price? So it used to be 300, now it drops to 200. So how much does the consumer surplus increase for existing buyers? You have 5 seconds left. Please hurry up. Okay, so let's see. Now people are divided. Some say 500, some say none of the above. And the answer is none of the above. Don't always think that the first couple answers are the right one. It could be none of the above. Okay, so suppose the price drops to $200. This triangle here is the buyers who have a willingness to pay that's below 300 but above 200. So when the price was 300, they didn't want to join. But now they said, yay, I want to buy my t-shirt or your favorite product. So you get another triangle that has the same size of the original consumer surplus. It's also $500. A height multiplied by base divided by 2. And the increase for the existing 10 units of the buyers, they pay $100 less. Multiplied by 10, you get consumer surplus gain of 1,000. And of course, 1,000 was not in any of the answers, so it is none of the above. So, okay, so that trick question got you guys. Yeah, so don't forget, there could be trick questions. All right, so now if you have any questions about consumer surplus side, you can ask here. Is there a hypothetical situation where price increases but demand also increases? So this is a very good question. Remember in chapter 4, we talked about the law of demand, which says that if prices go up, other things equal, quantity demanded goes down. So it could be the case that if these other things are changing, then even if prices go up, quantity demanded is even higher. One good example is when the pandemic broke out. Everybody wants to buy a mask. And guess what happens? Well, I mean, it used to be you can go to Costco to buy like 100 masks for like $250, and all of a sudden it's all sold out, and then the only thing you can find is the more expensive ones. And in that case, and so people are paying more for, but quantity demanded is even higher. I remember last Chinese New Year, that was right before the outbreak. I was in my in-laws because there's a tradition to go to my family and my wife's family. And then we went to Baoya, and I was like, wait a minute, where are all the masks? And I went home to try to order online on Shopee, and I was lucky to find a store that has something, and so I bought it. And the next day I checked, they said, please don't email us, please don't call us, we've sold out, everything's gone, and things like that. So if other things change, well, prices go up, but quantity demanded is still even higher. That's possible. But the real question is, could there be a violation of the law of demand where prices go up, other things are remaining the same, but quantity demanded actually also goes up? This is what we call an exception or a violation of the law of demand. Historically, there is what we call given goods. Those are very special goods that actually have this property. The real question is, can you find something like that in the field? I mean, empirically, can you find something like that? Because you need to control for everything else to make sure that it's not these other things that's causing this. There are recent research that actually try to use, say, a randomized experiment where they randomly give out coupons to lower the price of, like, say, rice in rural China, and to find that, so people actually, even though the price dropped, but people actually, quantity demanded actually was also decreased as well. And so that's a violation of the law of demand. So yeah, so there are things like that. I think the first example people came up with was potatoes in the Irish famine, because it was very scarce, and people were so poor that even though the price of potatoes went up, people actually consumed more potatoes. But there's a lot of discussion about, is it indeed true that the assumption that other things equal holds true in that situation? Because it's very hard to rule out all these other things that are always changing all the time. Okay, if you change consumers' cognition, they may want to buy more. For example, they may think the product is better than other. It's the price create its value. Okay, yeah, so one good example of this is, if you think of like a brand. I only wear sneakers from New Balance because I think New Balance is a good brand. I trust this brand. And then, so then of course, what that means is that compared to some other sneakers, for me, my willingness to pay for New Balance is actually higher. And so you can think of advertisement as a way to sort of, as this person said, change consumers' cognition or belief about this product. Actually, we will talk about brand names and advertisements, I think in chapter, I forgot 15 or 16, when we get to differentiated products. But that could be a product characteristic which reflects the quality of this product. For example, New Balance is known that they started to make these correction shoes 100 years ago, and so they have a good reputation. That could be a product characteristic that is not just created by price. But it is true that there are some goods that are like, so I buy a diamond that's like $1 million just to impress my girlfriend or something. So there are these kind of things that you could think of as another example of a violation of the law of demand. Okay, the previous question was talking about price and demand, but when we talk about the law of demand, we're talking about the relationship between prices and quantity demanded, because the demand curve, the whole demand curve, is the relationship between these two. And so if you change the price, I mean, you're just moving along the demand curve. The demand curve does not change itself if other things are equal. Professor, if suppose a new iPhone comes out because it is a new item, the price is also high, and many people want to buy it, is the demand and supply both goes up? Okay, so one problem for this framework is we're talking about an existing product. If you have a new product, before the iPhone 13 came out, there's no supply, right? I mean, this product does not exist, and so the market does not exist. Now we have it. Now we have a new product. You have a new market for this product, and so people start to form their taste or what they believe about this product, and so you have a demand. And of course, here, for the example, for iPhone 13, Apple is the monopoly, so you have only one single producer that's going to sell the iPhone, And yeah, so we'll talk about monopoly, I think, in chapter 15 when we get to different market structures. So at some sense, before this product was launched, this product does not exist, so there is no supply, no demand. But now it's launched, so now you have supply demand. So I'm not sure if that's counted as a shift or because before the launch of the new product, this product does not exist. Okay, so somebody asked me to share about the recent Nobel laureates study in economics. I just mentioned that one issue that you want to try to measure, like say a violation of the law of demand, is you need to vary the price. Suppose you decrease the price, but you instead of observing quantity demanded of that product to go up, you see it go down. Then that's a violation of the law of demand. Because a law of demand says if prices go up, quantity demanded should go down. If prices drop, quantity demanded should go up. And so to observe a violation, what you need is a price drop, but everything else does not change. And then you see quantity demanded also goes down. And says, oh, so here's a violation. The question is, how do you observe this in the data? Because you could have a lot of different things that could change at the same time. So in the example that the paper that I cited previously was that people went to rural China. They randomly assigned coupons to buy rice to these poor households. And so the assumption here is that these households were exactly the same, but this family got a coupon, the other family did not. And so if you compare the purchase patterns of the families that did get the coupon, so this is the treatment group, versus the control group, the families that did not get the coupon, then that difference will tell you what is the difference in quantity demanded when you see a price change, like exactly the amount of the coupon. And so for that measurement, they got this result that, yeah, so in rural China, where these families are so poor, we can find a given good which violates the law of demand. Okay, so looking for something like this empirically is not that easy. So in the example I cited, this is a randomized experiment. The researcher actually went to that place and randomly assigned coupons. Usually, you don't have either the resource or the opportunity to actually do a randomized experiment. But what you could try to do is to observe, like say, natural experiments. So things like this that change sort of randomly. So one good example of this, actually, it's a recent study published by my colleagues. So is to look at the national health insurance plan pricing for young children in Taiwan. In Taiwan, we have this a very good national health insurance plan, and so you only have to pay a small copay to visit the doctor. Actually, I'm not sure if you actually tried this. If you go to a local clinic, the copay is usually 100 NT dollars. But if you go to a bigger hospital, it's $250. But if you go to a medical center like NTU Hospital, they charge you 500 NT dollars. So it's 5 times the amount of going to a local clinic. But to subsidize, especially young children, you really want to care for these young children. The government actually subsidizes these families with young children so that all of their copay is 0 up to the age of 3. And so what that means is that so if you go to, regardless if you go to NTU Hospital or to your local clinic, you only have to pay 0. There's no copay because the government is going to pay the copay for you. And so my colleagues, what they do is they actually look into the health insurance database to see what happens when these young children exactly turn 3-year-old. So before their birthday of 3-year-old, clinical visits, you see a huge change for shifting from going to these medical centers, big hospitals, to these local clinics. But Hospitalization. So if you're so ill, you have to stay in the hospital. Well, those severe illness, there's no change at all. So what that means is that people do respond to this. It's my daughter's 3-year-old birthday. Now I have to pay 500 NT dollars instead of 0 if I go to NTU hospital, even if this is it's a fever, it's a cold, or it's a small incident. But if I go to the clinic, then I only have to pay 100, and people do respond to that. But if my daughter's birthday is tomorrow, it's all 0, right? Why not go to NTU hospital and get the best doctors, the best care? And okay, so this is a natural experiment because the researcher didn't design that the subsidy would have an exact drop at the date of the 3-year-old birthday, but you actually see the difference. And okay, so you can think of similar designs here to find these natural cutoff points and to observe if there's a difference. And of course, here you are making an assumption that, so the young child that's exactly above 3-year-old versus below are comparable. So you have a treatment group and a control group just before and after, and you use that to identify what is the effect of changing this subsidy or changing this price. And so here you see these people changing. And this method was developed by the 3 winners of the Bank of Sweden Prize in memory of Alfred Nobel this year. So the leading person is David Card. So he and Alan Kruger, who tragically passed away very recently, they started to try to do this by looking at how a minimum wage change would affect unemployment. So supposedly minimum wage is like a price control. So you cannot hire somebody below this price. They found a place where, one state was going to raise the minimum wage, but the neighboring state did not change the minimum wage. And so what they could do is that they could exploit the employment data right at the state boundary to see if this minimum wage change increased or decreased or did not affect unemployment. And of course, it's the same idea as like I described. So exactly above 3-year-old or below 3-year-old, and then so you use that difference to actually identify things. The other 2 winners, so Joshua Anguis, he is a co-author of Stacy, who is one of the organizers of one of the international workshops of the department. And the other one, the last person, is an econometrician who works on the statistics and econometrics of this. He is Hido Imbens. Actually took Hido's econometrics class when I was a PhD student at UCLA. So yeah, I'm very glad that they win this prize. So one thing I do want to say, because it's explicitly mentioned here about the minimum wage. So the Card and Kruger study, what they find, surprisingly, was they could not find a change or a significant change in unemployment, even though the minimum wage went up. But then people, this subsequently had a long literature discussing or trying to identify, is it indeed true that other things equal is indeed true there, or is it not, and things like that. And so there's a whole discussion about that. And the real challenge is because we are making an assumption here, because we're relying on a natural experiment that, like across the border or before 3-year-old, after 3-year-old birthday, they are comparable. And this is an assumption. So there's a long discussion there. So if you're interested, you should definitely take the more advanced economics courses that will talk about that. Does supply availability always affect consumer behavior perspective on a product? For example, limited supply for a phone, etc. Here's the question. So suppose Apple says, because of the chip shortage. iPhone 13 will have a limited supply. And then, now people start to line up for iPhones and search for iPhones like crazy. What's happening here? Compared to if Apple says, well, okay, so Foxconn is grinding out iPhones like crazy, so don't worry, everybody's going to get it. Well, if you remember, in chapter 4, we talked about there are consumers' expectations about the future could affect the current demand. So if I'm preparing that, so I'm going to buy an iPhone 13 for my son for Christmas, but if now I heard, oh no, the iPhone production is not ramping up as hoped because of this shortage, and so on. And so I'll be afraid that by the time of Thanksgiving or after Thanksgiving, I will not be able to secure the right color that my son likes. Then I might want to try to buy now. And so, so future expectations, especially if there's limited supply and so on, because usually these supply availability are short-term events. It's not like, so Apple's only going to sell like 100 iPhones and that's it. It's that, so you have to wait 4 weeks or 2 months or whatever the delay that you see on their website. How does luxury brands get its value for such low cost of production, such as luxury clothing? How does the brand give people incentives to buy? So I will have to defer this to the section that we talk about brand names because we explicitly talk about that. If you're really curious, you should check on NTU Cool. I do have last year's videos on there, so you could actually check that. So now let's prepare for the experiment. One very good reason why I want this to be in person is that we're going to run the in-person experiment. We're going to do 3 rounds. Each group will start with 150 e-coins, and you will be awarded based on the total e-coins added at the end. And so in each round, you will draw a card, and so that please make sure that nobody else can see the card. There's a lot of luck here, so don't worry. Before we start, I think we need to form the groups. So please form groups of 3 and sit together and prepare to come to TA to get a card. The number on the card is transferred to e-coins by multiplying it by 10. If you draw an ace, that's 10 points. If you get a 2, that's 20, 3, 30, 4, 50, all the way up to 10. If you get a jack, then it's 110. A queen is 120. If it's a king, then it's 130. So if you get a black card, you are a seller. If you get a red card, you are a buyer. In addition to that, we have, oh my God. Yeah. So if you get a black card, you are the seller. Here's the rules of the seller. You pay what's on your card to buy one product from Oh My God. That's how you get your product. For example, if you get a 5 of clubs, that means that you pay 50 e-coins to Oh My God, and Oh My God will give you a product card. Actually, the product card today is proudly my name card. Yeah. Okay. And then you can sell the product card to a buyer. And of course, whatever price you agree upon. And so, okay, so here, so you pay 50 e-coins to Oh My God gives you the product. And then you can decide to sell the product card to the buyer, and the buyer will pay you whatever price you agree upon. That's the seller side. So your profit is the price that you sold your product minus the cost, which is how much you paid to buy this product card from Oh My God. And so the higher the price, the higher your profit. And in fact, you can try to sell it at a very cheap price. For example, you can sell it with at a price of 1 e-coin. But because you paid 50 e-coins to buy the product, then you'll get a loss. So if your cost is higher than your market or the price you sell it, then you're making a loss. Remember, you need to gain beyond your 150 e-coins you have at hand to earn the class experiment credit. Please beware if you want to sell at a loss. You're allowed to do that, but you're very generous to the buyer. Yeah. But what you can do is choose not to trade. Then you get zero profit, because at the end you can return the product back to Oh My God and get a refund. Okay? You can choose not to trade. If you don't trade, at the end what you do is you bring the product card back and show him, oh, so my card is, I want to return the product to Oh My God, and Oh My God will refund you whatever you paid. All right, so that's the seller side. If you got a red card, you are a buyer. You can choose to buy a product card from the seller. For what? Well, because at the end of the experiment, you can bring the product to Oh My God and receive dollar amounts that's on your card. So for example, if you got a jack, that means that bringing the product card, my name card, to Oh My God, the Oh My God will give you 110 e-coins. So let's take a look. So it's on this side. If the buyer buys the product, at the end of the round, the buyer can go to Oh My God and say, here's the product, and Oh My God will give him 110 e-coins, because that's jack is the buyer's card. So the buyer's gain is the value of the buyer minus whatever price the buyer has paid to buy this product. So the lower the price, the higher the gain. Of course, suppose you buy at a very high price, you can say, oh, I'm going to pay all of my 150 e-coins to you. You're very generous to the seller, but that means because your card, if it's only a jack, you will only get 110 e-coins back from Oh My God. So that means that you will be buying at a loss. Instead, what you could do is you can choose not to trade. Of course, then you don't get any product card, but you don't pay anything, so your gain is zero. So for example, if the jack, traded with Fred, the five of clubs, at a price of $78, then what is the gain for Jack? Well, Jack can get 110 e-coins because he's paying the price of 78, so the gain for Jack is 32, 110 minus 78. For Fred is sold at a price of 78, and his cost is 50 because that's how much he paid for the product card. So the profit for Fred is 28 e-coins. So any questions about this? No? So then we should try. So when a buyer and a seller group reach an agreement, you should bring your card to Oh My God and complete your trade. Yeah, and so prepare the e-coins, and you should trade the e-coins and then bring the cards to complete it. So the sellers would buy the product card from Oh My God, and then buyers would buy the product card from seller and write the price on it. And Oh My God will take the product from the buyer and give the amount that's on the buyer's card. Okay, 3 rules about the trading. Number 1, you cannot force the other side. Trade is voluntary, okay? Number 2, trade is irrevocable. You cannot, if you both come to Oh My God and then you see, hey, you have an ace. Why did you sell me at a price of like $100 or something? I said, no, I don't want to trade. No. Once you come to report your trade, you cannot regret, okay? And the last thing is that you can say anything you want, but you cannot say, this is my card. Yeah, that's not allowed. All right, so let's have a little quiz. What happens if Jack with a 5 of hearts meets with Fred, which has a king of spades? What would happen? Remember, red is the buyer side. So the buyer's value is 50. And the seller is the black. But the seller's cost is how much? 130. Can they trade? No, they cannot trade because the cost is so high, they cannot reach an agreement of a price that's between the value and the cost, unless one or even both of them are trading at a loss. Next one, what if King has 9 of clubs and John has 2 of spades. So now what happens? Well, both of these are sellers, right? If 2 groups come to the front and both of you are buyers or both of you are sellers, 相公. Yeah, I mean, you cannot trade. I mean, it's a mistake. So too bad. You have to go back. All right, so question, what is the role for oh my God? Well, he's God, right? So he should bless our land. And it's because of this blessing, there's gains from trade. All right, so each group, please come here to get one of these cards. Yes, please shuffle the cards and hand it out. All right, so I believe each group already has 1 card. Okay, so if you get a black card, you are a seller. Sellers, please come to oh my God and bring your money, pay the price on your card to get a product card. For the other people, you have your record sheet. Please fill up on the top of your record sheet. So if you're a red or a black card, what's your number and the dollar amount. Remember the 3 trading rules. Trade is voluntary. Trade is irrevocable once you report the trade. And number 3, you can say anything, but you're not allowed to show the card or review what's on the card. Oh, that's a good question. Suppose you got a red card. Can you claim you have a black card? Well, theoretically, if you want, you can say anything, right? I said the only thing you cannot do is to show your card, right? But what would happen if you falsely claim you have a black card when you have a red card? Whoever agrees to trade with you, when you both come down, you would realize you cannot trade because you faked your role. So yeah, so you can do that, but it's a waste of your time and it's a waste of the trading partner's time. The other group would be very mad at you. All right, so now let's prepare to start. If you got an agreement, please come down to oh my God to trade. Okay, so round 1, free-form bargaining. What does that mean? You're allowed to talk to any group in the room. Okay? You have 3 minutes. You have 1 minute left. Please hurry up. And now we actually see the formation of the New York Stock Exchange. If you reach an agreement, please come down and report your trade. Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. Time's up. Okay, so people are starting to report their trade. So if you did not make a trade, please return your card. And if you're a seller, you get a refund. If you're a buyer, please also return the card because then you get a better draw, hopefully, next time. And if you made a trade, please report your trade. If you're done, please fill out the bottom of your record sheet. You put your price that you traded. Did you earn or lose how much money? So you have your profit or your gain. If you did not make a trade, just cross it out. Well, how was round one? You got unlucky, right? That's one possibility. One thing that I noticed is that at the very beginning of the 3 minutes, there was the New York Stock Exchange and the London Stock Exchange. But after a minute or two, the London Stock Exchange dissolved and everybody merged into New York Stock Exchange. So here you see something very interesting happening, right? Because there is so to actually trade, even though I said free-form bargaining, you need a place to meet with other parties. And if everybody's in New York Stock Exchange, you're the only person in London Stock Exchange, then you have no opportunity to trade. And so there is this effect that people do need a trading platform or a place to trade, and people just all converge toward the same place. Let me ask, what are the trading prices in round one? There were 4 units of trade at a price of 55, 70, 60, and 75. All right, so now we will start round 2. Round 2 is the same thing. So each group, please send one person to draw a card. If you got a seller, then if you've got a black card, you should bring the eCoins to buy a product card from Oh My God. And for the other people, so now you should fill in round 2. So the first half of your record sheet, you should fill in, you got a red card or a black card, what is your number on your card, and the dollar amount. So remember, if you reach an agreement, please come, the 2 groups should come, bring your card and money to complete the trade. In round 2, again, we will do free-form bargaining. Same rule as round 1. So let's start. You have 50 seconds. 不要再凹了，赶快成交吧。You have 45 seconds. 20 seconds. Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Time's up. Please report your trade. If you did not make a trade, please return your card. The sellers may get a refund from Oh My God. The trades that reported 75, 75, 65, and 80. So that's round 2. So please fill out the bottom of your record sheet. So what price did you trade? Did you earn or lose? How much money? If you didn't trade, just cross it out. Okay, so now we'll go to round 3. Round 3 is a little bit different. So what we're going to do is we will actually do what we call a open double auction. Each group, please send one person down to draw the card. And if you are the seller, please prepare to buy the product from the Oh My God. So did everybody get the card? Yes, okay. So now please fill out again round 3, the top part of your record sheet, red card or black card, number, and the dollar amount. Now, so how is this round 3 going to be done? This will be open double auction. So if you want to buy, you should call buy 23 or buy 50, buy 60. If you are a seller, you want to sell, then you should call out sell 150, sell 100, and so on. If you want to take the offer of the other side, shout take. Okay? Okay, so now let's start. So NTU Stock Exchange open. Any offers? Sell 80. Okay, sell 80.
Sell 105.
There is already a sell 80, so sell 105 is rejected. But good question. Guess what is their card, right? Sell 105. No, okay, yeah, okay. So sell 80. Any offers? Sell 50. Oh, 60. Sorry, yeah. Please shout out loud. Sell 60. Taken. Which group take? Please raise your hand. Sell 60. Please raise your hand. Okay, so please come, bring your card and e-coins down and trade. Okay, so next one. Let's start over again. Any offers? Sell 120. Sell 90. Sell 85. Sell 80. Taken. Okay, so sell 80 is taken. Next one. Sell 79. Sell 75. Buy 70. Okay, so buy 70 is over here. Taken. Okay, so please come down and trade. Next unit. Buy 55. Buy 60. Buy 65. Sell 85. Taken. Okay, next unit. Sell 95. Sell 80. Okay, so no offers. What? Should I close the market? Should I close the market? Once? Twice? Okay, market closed. All right, so what happened here? So 60, 80, 70, and 85. So please return your card if you did not make a trade. The sellers would get a refund from Oh My God. For now, please fill out the bottom of the Q1. And please return the cards if you didn't make a trade and get a refund. And also, please calculate how many e-coins you earned in total. And then bring the e-coins back to the TA so the TA can record your gains from this experiment. What are the cards? Let's see. For red cards, we have King, queen, jack, 10, 9, 7, 6, 4. And for black cards, we have ace, 2, oops, I think is that correct? 1, 5, yeah. Let me put this in the middle of everything. Okay. Ace, 2, 4, 7, 8, 9, 10, jack. And so the equilibrium price is between $80 and $90. And the equilibrium quantity is 5 units. What we actually got, like for example, in our continuous double auction, is a price of 60, 80, 70, and 85. So we are converging towards the equilibrium price, even though nobody knew the actual supply demand there. And in the let's see, the first round, we had prices 75, 60, 70, 75. And in the other round, 65, 75, 75, 80. So again, we are converging towards the equilibrium, but not there yet. So that's the results for this experiment. And we talked about the supply and demand model. That's related to the class today. If you look at your record sheet, you can plot this in the price. So that's why we already did this. So here, the supply demand model predicts that the equilibrium quantity should be 5 units of trade at the price of 85. People start out at different prices, but it seems that we are converging towards the equilibrium price that's between 80 and 90. So how is your reservation price related to the card you received? I joked about one group calling out cell 105. You can imagine that their card would be above 105 if they want to sell 105 to avoid a loss. And we do have a jack in the seller side, so the cost is so high. Anyway, so when the price is X dollars, how many buyers and sellers want to trade? And it depends on, like in this case, if the price is 85, then the first 5 buyers and the first 5 sellers who want to trade, because they have either a value that's above this cost or a cost that's below the price. Initially, I was hoping we could have 24 groups, so we'll have this supply-demand schedule. So if you think of this supply-demand schedule, is it possible that everybody trades? Or what's the maximum number of trades that's possible? Well, you can have the king trade with the jack, the queen trade with the 10, the one jack trades with the 9, another jack trade with the 8, and so on. So you can have actually everybody in this experiment could have traded. So if you want to maximize the number of trades so that everybody gets something, it's possible. But the question here is that, is it always good to have as many transactions as possible? And here it does depend on what we think or how we define good in this experiment. So if you think of it, if you break this down to the left side of the equilibrium, the value of the buyers are part A and part B, but the cost of the sellers are part C and part D. What you get is that for up to the 8th unit in this graph, the value exceeds the cost. But for the remaining buyers and sellers, the buyer's value is below the seller's cost. So in that sense, having these people trading beyond the equilibrium quantity here, which is 8, is not good, in the sense that for the whole society, you are paying a higher cost to get a smaller value. So if you think of it, in our experiment, the role of oh my God is to bless our land. So to maximize the blessing, what you want to do is to only have these people trade. So the real question here is, do you care about equality or do you want to get efficiency? Well, if you have everybody can trade so that everybody gets something. Actually, some of the groups today are so unlucky they got 0. Too bad. Things like that do happen. But in terms of maximizing the total amount of blessing, which is efficiency. So there's this trade-off between equality and efficiency. However, in addition to that, there's something else, which is to get everybody to trade, what you need is you need to know the card of each group. So they say, oh, so if you're a K, you should go trade with the Jack. If you're the Q, you should go trade with the 10, and so on. In our experiment, the rule says you're not allowed to show your card. So actually, nobody knows the distribution that I just plotted. But at some sense, the market works reasonably well that we do have, in each time, we have 4 units of trade. So almost all of the gains from trade are realized. So we almost reached the maximum amount of blessing. And this does not require information about the card of every group. And in reality, the real challenge is that if you ask a buyer, what is your willingness to pay for this product? Or if you ask the seller, what is your cost for this product? They may not tell you. So to try to maximize the number of trades, you require knowledge that may not be feasible in the field. But instead, to maximize efficiency, what you could do is, even if everybody is trading voluntarily and they choose to review or not to review, but you can achieve or approximate efficiency in the market. Okay, so what is the ideal, or what is the total amount of blessing that's possible? So you can actually do the calculation. In this example, it's 490. This is last year's example that we actually did. So you can actually do the calculation if you want, and so you get how much efficiency that you achieved. I'm here giving you the example of last year where they achieved 81.6% of the maximum amount of blessing that's possible. You can also do round 3's calculation. In last year's example, in round 3, you get a 93.9% efficiency. One interesting question, does the transaction price affect total amount of blessing? Remember, we are looking at the difference between A minus C, basically. So where the prices are don't really matter that much, because if this pair trades at a very high price, the seller is gaining a lot, but that's completely offset by the buyer paying a higher price. So what we really care about is this difference, the cost and the value of the buyer. And so the actual transaction price actually does not affect the total amount of blessing. However, it is true that if some of these guys over here, beyond the equilibrium quantity, if these guys trade because the price fluctuates a lot, then you might have a problem because these people have a higher cost or a lower value. Okay, so how does the supply and demand model predict transaction? So you have the intersection of supply and demand. That's what we learned in chapter 4. You have the equilibrium price, equilibrium quantity. In the example I show on the slides, the equilibrium quantity is 8 at a price between $80 and $90. In our example, because we have fewer groups, equilibrium quantity is only 5, but the equilibrium price is still between $80 and $90. What if the price is 115? Well, what you get is you have quantity supplied to be a lot, to be 12, and quantity demanded to be only 2. So you have a surplus. And so in the market, number of buyers who want to trade are far less than the buyers who want to sell. And so the sellers would bid down the price because they would start to lower their price. In the round 3, we did see this. People start to going from sell 120, sell 90, sell 85 to sell 80. And then we also saw sell 79, sell 75. So yeah, if the prices are too high, you have this pressure of the sellers competing by lowering their prices. If the price is too low, if the price is 45, quantity supplied will be only 4, but quantity demanded will be 11, so you have a shortage. And of course, what this means is that on the other side, the buyers will want to bid up the price, and so you have the pressure to go back to equilibrium, where quantity supplied equals to quantity demanded. Okay, so did the theory predict data well? That's an empirical question. In your case, it seems that at least in the last round, even though we didn't have that much practice, if we do this again, you can think things could be even better. In the end, prices did converge to a price that's between 80 and 90 at 85. So that's your result. So, okay. Next question. What's the difference between free-form bargaining and open double auction? And does this lead to different outcomes? If you look at the free-form bargaining results, I'm not sure. I mean, let's see. In one round, the prices were, let's see, 55, 65, 70, 75. I'm not sure if the seller who sold at 55 would hope to meet the buyer who bought at 75, because then the seller could have sold at a better price. Yeah. So one problem for the free-form bargaining is that, well, the whole point for everybody converging to, like, say, the London Stock Exchange or the New York Stock Exchange is that you need to be where all the other parties are to get the information or to find the right party to trade. But in contrast, in round 3, when we did the open double auction, what you get is that everybody sees the prices immediately. Buy 50, sell 120, sell 90, sell 89. When each time an offer is made, well, all of the groups know of this price. You can have this pressure of competition and for the prices to converge to equilibrium. And in some sense, the free-form bargaining is like a medieval market. Well, actually, if you think of it, what is a market back in the old days? Everybody getting to the same place, like, say, the town square at the same time, like, say, Monday morning at daybreak. And so you bring your milk, I bring my eggs, and then we start to trade. But our continuous double auction, that is actually modeled by according to the rules of the actual New York Stock Exchange. Actually, if you look at the picture of the New York Stock Exchange when it actually works, each stock, so you see these specialists who have a number on their uniform, which basically tells you which stock that specialist is trading. And of course, now it's computerized. So instead of doing this by hand, the brokers basically send in these buy offers and sell offers online. But the rule is still, at some sense, the same, where you have these buy offers coming in, sell offers coming in, and then they call it the market orders to take the offers of the other side. And actually, in round 1 and round 2, we already saw this, how the classroom layout would affect this market. We have the New York Stock Exchange on the left aisle of the classroom, and then people on the right aisle would all shift there. Apparently, I'm blocking the front. Otherwise, another way you guys could try to coordinate is everybody coming to, like, the front of the classroom where you have a whole place to actually try to bargain. If you look at the New York Stock Exchange, they literally have what they call a trading pit. So it's this big space where all of the brokers are just yelling these offers at each other. Okay, so that's the end of the experiment. 10 e-coins equals to 1 point. Please write down how many points you earn. And then so we'll go back to chapter 7. We already talked about consumer surplus. And after the experiment, you should realize consumer surplus is precisely the buyer's value minus the market price. That's what the buyer groups in the experiment earned in terms of e-coins. That's consumer surplus. And the flip side would be the seller's profit. That's producer surplus. So if you think of the cost, that's the value that the sellers have to give up to produce a good. That's including opportunity cost. That's what we saw in the first couple chapters. And so you have a willingness to sell. This is the lowest price accepted by a seller for 1 unit of good or service. In experiment, that's the number on your card. If you got a 5 of spades, then you will not be willing to sell below 50 e-coins because then you'll be doing it at a loss. And the 50 is your cost. So you don't want to sell below this cost. That's your willingness to sell. So given your cost or willingness to sell, of course here in the experiment it's very clear, right? Because 50 is the amount that you have to pay to, oh my God, to actually get the product. So that's your cost for producing this good for the seller. And the producer surplus is your price that you get selling this product minus the cost. So this is the amount that you earn for seller to participate in the market. And in the experiment, well, if your group ever been a seller group, then you know immediately what is producer surplus. That's the amount that you earn if you actually sold something. So, okay, so you can think of, suppose you have 3 houses that you need to mow your lawn. And so you have 3 lawn mowing business in town that you can hire. And so you have Rosie, Chuck, and Chang. And you have their willingness to sell. You can derive the supply schedule for this. So if the price is below $600, quantity supplied is 0. If it's above 600 but below 1,200, then quantity supplied is 1 because only Chang wants to mow your lawn. If it's above 1,200, then you have quantity supplied equals to 2 because Chuck would also want to mow the lawn. If it's above 2,100, even Rosie would want to mow your lawn. Okay, so here you can draw the supply curve, well, exactly corresponding to your supply schedule. And below 600, quantity supply is 0. Above 600, but not up to 1,200, quantity supplied is 1. Above 1,200, then quantity supplied is 2. And then beyond 2,100, you get quantity supplied to be 3. And just like what you saw on the demand side, on the supply side, so each of these steps correspond to the cost of the marginal seller. So you have Chang's cost at 600, Chuck's cost at 1,200, and Rosie's cost at 2,100. And if the price drops below that, then that seller will want to drop out of the market. So now to calculate the producer surplus, you think about a market price. In this case, suppose it's 1,500. Then for Chang, the producer surplus is 1,500 minus his cost, which is 600. So you get a producer surplus of $900. For Chuck, he gets a producer surplus of 300, which is 1,500 minus 1,200. And so the total surplus is the sum of that, which is 1,200, because Rosie has no producer surplus because the price is too low. Rosie does not want to load the mon because the price is below his cost. All right, so total producer surplus is you sum up each seller's producer surplus to get total producer surplus. And it's the area that's below the price but above the supply curve, because the height of the supply curve measures the seller's cost, and each seller, you have the price minus the cost to get that seller's producer surplus, and so it's the whole area. So let's go back to the t-shirt market. So here again, you have a lot of sellers, so you have a straight line. Suppose the price is $400. So at quantity 15, you have the marginal seller whose cost is 300, and so her producer surplus is 300. And so the whole area, you get the total producer surplus. So that's below the price and above the supply curve, going from quantity 0 all the way up to here, the quantity supplied is 25. So again, the height of the triangle, you can calculate 400 minus 150. So you get 250. And so 250 multiplied by 25 divided by 2, 3125, that's the producer surplus for this market. Okay, and if the price drops, let's see what happens. Just like a price change would affect consumer surplus, a price change would also change producer surplus. So now the new producer surplus is 1125 because the height is now 150 and the quantity supplied is only 15. And again, there are two reasons that the producer surplus would change. One is because some sellers leave the market because their cost is above 300. When the price was 400, they say, hey, I want to sell, but now it's 300, no, I quit. Then the other part is due to existing sellers. They still want to sell at a new price of 300, but now they're getting less because the price is lower. All right, so now prepare for the quiz. So now we have a supply curve, another market. Find the marginal seller's cost at quantity equals to 10. Find the total producer surplus when the price is $200. And then suppose the price increases to 300. Find the increase in producer surplus due to selling 5 more units and getting a higher price for the initial 10 units. So let's take a look. So here's the graph. What's the marginal seller's cost at quantity supplied to be 10? Okay, so the majority of you say 200, and it is 200. Then next question, find the total surplus for price equal to $200. Okay, so a lot of you say 1,000, and it is indeed 1,000. Let's take a look. Going from quantity supplied equals to 10, you go up the supply curve, you see the marginal seller has a marginal cost of $200. And if the price is $200, then you have this producer surplus, so 200 minus 0, so that's 200, that's the height, multiplied by 10, which is the quantity supplied, divided by 2, so that's 1,000. Now let's go to part C. So third quiz. Suppose price goes from 200 to 300. Find the increase in producer surplus due to selling 5 more units. The majority of you say 250, and it is 250. Last part. What's the increase in producer surplus due to getting a higher price on the initial 10 units when the price goes up from 200 to 300? Okay, so now it's a little bit divided. Some say 1,000, some say 500, and the answer is 1,000. So when the price goes to 300, producer surplus increases because you have more units sold. So you have this blue triangle over here, and it has a height of 100 and a base of 5. So 5 times 100 divided by 2, you get 250. So that's the gain for selling 5 additional units. And the remaining gain comes from the initial 10 units selling at $100 more. So $100 times 10, you get a gain of $1,000 in producer surplus. All right, so here now we're going to think about what is good, what is bad. Imagine you have a benevolent social planner. So this is an all-knowing, all-powerful, well-intentioned dictator, like, oh my God. Well, oh my God knows everything. Of course, Omega can have different goals. One possibility that we saw in the experiment was to maximize the number of trades so that you have an equality. Everybody gets a little bit gain from trade. But suppose this social planner wants to maximize the economic well-being of everyone in the society. So you can think about market outcomes, cares about efficiency or equality. So when we say efficiency, so how do you measure the market well-being is very important. And then using that, we can ask, so is the allocation of resources desirable? And in the market, you have decentralized setting where the resource allocation, as you saw in your experiment, free-form bargaining or open double auction, it's determined by the interaction of all these buyers and sellers. All of you want to get the most points out of, most e-coins out of the experiment. And so here, the measurement that we're going to talk about is total surplus. This measures society's well-being. And we use this as the criteria to ask, is the market allocation efficient? So what is total surplus? It's the sum of consumer surplus, producer surplus. Consumer surplus is the buyer's gain from participating in the market, the value of the buyer minus the price that the buyers pay. Producer surplus is the seller's gain from participating in the market. It's the amount that the sellers receive minus the cost of the seller. And so total surplus is the value of the buyer minus the cost of the seller. That's why in the experiment, in one of the questions we're talking about, so how do you maximize the blessing from oh my God? It's between the buyer's value, so that's the demand curve, above the supply curve, which is the seller's cost. So efficiency means that you're allocating resources so that you're maximizing total surplus. We use total surplus as the objective function and see, do you maximize? Is the pie as big as possible? In contrast, equality is about how to allocate prosperity uniformly among members in the society. So in our classroom experiment, the example would be trying to maximize the number of trades so that every buyer and seller gets the trade. They all get something. That's like equality. And of course, these two goals may not always align, as shown in the experiment. So the market's allocation, you try to give the good to the buyers who have the highest values, of course measured by their willingness to pay. And you try to have the sellers who have the lowest cost to meet the demand. So in that sense, then you will be able to maximize the total surplus. And so basically you're trying to produce the quantity that maximizes total surplus, which is the sum of consumer surplus and producer surplus. What that means is that if you change the quantity, you would not be able to increase total surplus. Okay, so let's take a look. The market equilibrium here in this example, price is $300, quantity is 15. And so consumer surplus is the upper triangle, above price but below the demand curve. Producer surplus is the lower triangle that's below the price but above the supply curve. So you have this total surplus, which is the sum of the two. Now, is the market efficient? Well, if you think of it, who are the buyers are going to buy? It's the buyers who have a willingness to pay that's above or equal to $300. These are the buyers. If you have a willingness to pay below 300, you would not buy in equilibrium. So basically, it's the higher value buyers who are getting the good. In that sense, it's good in terms of resource allocation. If you have the lower value buyers buying the good, then you could have increased total surplus by switching it to have the higher value buyers to consume this good. Same thing for the cost side. Which sellers are producing these? To have the best resource allocation, you should have the low cost sellers selling it instead of the high cost sellers. And here, what you get is that in the equilibrium, if you have a seller cost below 300, you would produce and sell. If you have a cost above, you would not do that. In our classroom experiment, we saw that. The equilibrium quantity was 5. So if you got a very bad draw, then you should not sell. If you got a low cost, a ace, you should produce. And so we are in equilibrium having the low cost sellers producing and selling the good. And so the high value buyers are getting the good to consume. The low cost sellers are producing it and selling it. So is total surplus maximized as this equilibrium quantity? In this example, the market equilibrium quantity is 15. Suppose we go to a quantity of 20. So here, the marginal seller has a cost of 350, and the marginal buyer has a value of 200, which is lower than 350. So if you force everybody to produce at quantity of 20, you could have actually increased total surplus by reducing your quantity. And this is true for any quantity that's above 15. So if you have any quantity that's over here, you always have this property that the seller's cost is above the buyer's value. So because of that, not producing that much and reducing your production would actually increase total surplus. On the flip side, suppose the quantity is 10. Now, the cost of producing the marginal unit is 250, but the value for the marginal unit at quantity 10 is 400. So you could have increased total surplus by increasing production, because here the value is far above the cost of producing that unit. This is true for any quantity that's below 15, because if you have a quantity below 15, the buyer's value is always above the seller's cost. So if you have any quantity that's below that, you should increase the quantity. So at the quantity 15, you are at what we call the equilibrium, because if you are above that, then total surplus will go down. You should reduce quantity to increase total surplus. But if you're below 15, then you should, moving back towards 15, increasing production, that would increase total surplus. So total surplus is maximized at 15. Of course, if you know calculus, then you don't need all this. You can just solve the maximization problem. Okay, and this idea goes all the way back to Adam Smith, back in his Wealth of Nations in 1776, 200 years before I was born. So it's not from the benevolence of the butcher, the brewer, or the baker that we expect our dinner, but from the regard of their self-interest. Every individual neither intends to promote the public interest nor knows how much he is promoting it. So here, even though you don't know anything, but he is intended only his own gain, and he is in this, as in many other cases, led by an invisible hand to promote an end which is no part of his intention. By pursuing his own interests, he frequently promotes that of the society more effectually than he really intends to promote. So this is the birth of economics and about the market. So yeah, forces and supply and demand, as we've shown in the experiment and also in class, in the lecture, you allocate resources efficiently. But here we are making some assumptions about the market. Markets are perfectly competitive. The outcomes in the market matters only to the buyers and sellers in the market. And so if these assumptions are false, the market equilibrium may not be efficient anymore. So that's what we call market failure. For example, if we have one single buyer or one single seller or a small group of sellers that can control market price, then there's market power. Then what you can get is that the market can be efficient. We'll see that when we go to monopoly. The other possibility is externalities. This is the decision for buyers because what the buyers and sellers do would affect bystanders. Like pollution. I mean, if I smoke, people standing next to me will also be affected. They're forced to consume secondhand smoking. So if we burn coal, then of course you will have air pollution and also you will increase global warming. In these cases, from a standpoint of the society as a whole, you could have an inefficient equilibrium. Okay. Now ask a survey question, ask the expert. Supplying kidney, agree or disagree? A market that allows payment for human kidneys should be established on a trial basis to help extend the lives of patients with kidney disease. Do you agree or disagree with this statement? And guess, do you think economists surveyed agree or disagree with this statement? Okay, so let's start. So do you agree or disagree? A market that allows payment for human kidneys should be established on a trial basis to help extend the lives of patients with kidney disease. Yeah, strongly agree, agree, uncertain, disagree, strongly disagree, no opinion, or prefer not to answer. Okay, so now you see things are divided. Well, you can still enter this poll. Some strongly agree or agree, some are not sure, some disagree, and so on. Okay, here's the trick question. So do you think economists agree or disagree? 100% agree, 50 to 99% economists agree, 1% to 49% economists agree, 0% economists agree, or don't know. Okay, so let's look at your answers. A lot of you say 50 to 99%. Some say 1 to 49. It's actually 57%. Let me show you the data. 27 not sure, 16% disagree, and 57 agree. I do want you to bring this question back to ask about the market of kidneys. We will talk about this next week. It is a real question. I mean, should we allow people to buy and sell kidneys? And actually, if you want, you can try to Google. There is a country in the world that allows people to buy and sell kidneys. Let me just read this slide and then we can stop. Some years ago, the Boston Globe ran this headline, "How a Mother's Love Helped Save 2 Lives." The mother couldn't donate the kidney to her son because it's not compatible. She still wants to donate. So the hospital's solution was the mom donates the kidney to a stranger, but her son moves to the top of the kidney waiting list. And the question is, do you think that is a good idea? Is that selling my kidney? Or do you think that's a good thing or not? I mean, that's a real question. We will discuss this next week. Last week, we didn't finish Chapter 7, so we should proceed on Chapter 7. The last part, we were talking about this issue about organ donation and the critical issue of, do you think it's okay to buy or sell people's kidneys? In the slides, we have this story where a mother decides to donate the kidney to her son, but it was not possible for medical reasons. There's some incompatibility. There are all sorts of different blood types and other medical issues that may prevent people to be good matches for organ donation. But the hospital decided that we'll have the mom donate one of her kidneys to somebody else, to a third party, in exchange that her son will be moved to the top of the kidney waiting list. And so the question is, does that count as selling your organs? Or is it okay to do that? The first question we should think about is, what is the kidney market look like nowadays? And the second question is this current situation, is it efficient or is it fair? That is an issue. And then the last question is, suppose we allow people to buy or sell their organs, how would that change the outcome? So I think that's the main issues that we want to ask. So first question is, what do you know about the market for kidneys? I'm not sure how many of you have an organ donation card. I have one, so if I get into an accident and I'm brain dead, then I will be donating my organs. That's part of what we call the market for organs nowadays. So the real question is, what's the whole picture? Demand is sky high, yes. In Taiwan, there are thousands of people on the waiting list waiting for a kidney or for a liver transplant. Yeah, if you think of it, it's crazy. I mean, most people have a spare kidney around. I believe it's between 7,000 to 9,000 people who have kidney failure. And they're spending literally millions of billions of dollars on our health insurance because they need to go to the hospital like 3 times a week to deal with the situation. And if you think of it, it's like, hey, actually, it's not that there's no supply. Everybody, almost everybody, has an excess kidney because you only need 1 kidney to live. As long as one of your kidneys is functioning, you're fine. And it's like, hey, I mean, almost everybody has a spare kidney. Why don't we create some gains from trade, right? But yeah, but it is a real problem. I mean, people frown upon the idea of selling your kidney. Although people joke about, oh, so the latest iPhone Pro Max is so expensive. The MacBook Pro is like 100,000 NT dollars. You have to sell your kidney to have one. But I mean, in reality, very few people actually think it's okay or actually get involved in buying or selling organs. So it's a very interesting situation. What makes things even worse is that there's a black market. If you're a doctor in Taiwan, you would see your patients who had kidney failure or have liver problems, and they go on a vacation to someplace abroad and then come back with a functioning organ. Which country did he or she go to, or where did this come from? I mean, it's off record, but you see that in the patients. So it is a real problem. Okay, so now I see a lot of responses. Low supply, high demand. There's a shortage. Sell one if you are so poor. Actually, that's a very interesting question because if you're really bankrupt, where can you sell your kidney? I mean, there isn't a market for that. I mean, in order to be able to sell your kidney, you need a market. Anyway, okay, so here you see a lot of these. Very few people willing to donate, but a lot of people need them. Okay, the next question, is the current situation efficient or is it fair? So here we're using 2 different criteria to judge whether or not the status quo is good or bad. These are normative judgments. Do not be fooled. Economists still have to face the normative question of is it good or bad? Because when you talk about efficiency, you are imposing a particular normative value judgment on the current situation. Oh, I love this. It is what it is. Yeah, that's the sort of positive viewpoint for this. Although you have to remember, if you say it is what it is, there is an implicit value judgment that the status quo is good, or whatever the status quo is, that's good, or that's your judgment criteria. And of course, if you are a revolutionist, then you will disagree with this kind of value judgment. You would always say, yeah, the status quo is bad. Something needs to change. Okay, the overwhelming response here is it's not efficient. The question is it fair or not? Some people say it's relatively fair. Some people say it's not fair because the rich guys can buy from the black market. Okay, so suppose we allow people to buy and sell kidneys. What would happen to efficiency? Okay, so one thing we talked about in class is what happens when the price is too high or too low. When the prices are too low, you get a shortage where there's excess demand but insufficient supply. So in this case, when we ban a market completely, we are creating a price control of the price cannot be above 0. Actually, we also see similar things in terms of, like, say, sperm or egg donation. So if you want to donate your egg, there is a cap on, so the hospital can give you a nutrition compensation of, I think it's 90,000 NT dollars, 9万块, if you donate your egg. I think sperm donation, there's no compensation. But in any case, compared to the actual market price, the price for these donations are way low than the market price. And so what happens is you have a shortage. There's so many people who need an organ, but so few supply. And of course, if you allow this market to be legalized, this shortage would, because the price is going to go up, the shortage is going to shrink. When you converge back to equilibrium price, you do get the efficient outcome. Then the question here is always, so why don't we do that? But somehow it is true that this is a real problem. People frown upon the idea that, oh, okay, so if you're poor, you sell your organ and so that you can have an iPhone or you can get a college education or something like that. Somehow, something's not right. Yeah, so this is called repugnance. Some things, people just think that selling and buying that is not good. The organ market is not the only market that has this kind of things. At some sense, like say, do you think people think it's okay to pay for sex? Is that okay? How about buy or sell, like say, drugs or marijuana? I mean, you have these things that people frown upon when you say, hey, let's allow people to buy and sell these things. So in particular, organs is one of it. All right, so good question. There is one country in the world where buying and selling organs is legal. Which country is that? Do you want to make a guess? Here's one of the pictures taken from one of the bulletin boards of that country. So this is Iran. Do not ask me why that form of Islam allows people, says it's okay to buy and sell organs. Here are some articles. If you look at these two QR codes, one is a Guardian's article on the kidney market in Iran. There's also a Wikipedia entry on this market. So if you look at this photo, you have this, A plus, and then there's the phone number and the name. So it's like, yeah, so I have a kidney for sale. Here's my blood type. Please contact me. Over here, here's an O, and then here's an A plus. Yeah, you have these things. A plus is not your grade. It's a post to buy and sell organs. Of course, this does not come without any problems. Actually, in the news article, you would see people talk about they sold their organs, supposedly in exchange for something else, but it did not deliver. So there are some other issues there. But it is true that if we have one example of having an organ in the market, it's true, there's no shortage. If you want a kidney, just call one of these numbers and you'll get one. So it is telling that even though people talk about black markets or like evil China has these gray markets over there, well, I mean, but officially, even in China, you're not allowed to buy and sell your organs. There is a reason why the only country that I can find, if you can find a second country, I'll be very happy to add to my list. But there's only one country that I know of that you are allowed to buy and sell your organs. So it's really something that people feel uncomfortable about. However, even if you think buying and selling organs is not okay, or even if you think it's okay, but a lot of people in the society think it's not okay, does that mean that we should prevent all possible organ exchange? In Taiwan, actually, because the government is so afraid that you have these under-the-table arrangements, that it actually bans any organ donation beyond a small family circle. So unless you are a relative to the patient, you're not allowed to donate your organ to a particular person. Yeah. But in that sense, that's the other extreme. So if you want to donate to your family, okay, but if you want to donate to your friend, no. Because they're so afraid that you and your friend have some under-the-table arrangement. So here we have one extreme where you're not even allowed to donate freely to a friend. But the other extreme is Iran, where you can buy and sell organs freely. But there are a lot of middle grounds. So think about some examples here. Okay, so this is UCLA's kidney exchange program. It's called the kidney swap. So the idea here is that so you have a couple. The wife can donate to the husband, but the husband and the wife, they have incompatible blood types or other medical reasons that they cannot donate. And here's another couple that has a similar problem. But by God's arrangement, this wife is a perfect match with this husband, and this wife is a perfect match with the other husband. So they say, hey, why don't we have my wife donate to you in exchange for your wife to donate to me? So there's no money changed hands. We're not buying an organ, or we're not selling my wife's kidney. It's that my wife wants to donate to me, your wife wants to donate to you, but for medical reasons, we can't directly donate. But what we can do is we can swap. Is that okay? Okay, if you think two-way exchange is okay, what about three-way? So I donate to your brother, and then you donate to her sister, and then she donates to my son, or something like that. Well, of course, to find these three-way exchanges is not easy. I mean, you have to have a perfect match, right? It happens that, so I'm a perfect match to your brother, and then you're a perfect match with her sister, and she is a perfect match to my son. So it's like God created this coincidence that even there are three families who all need a kidney transplant, but just are not compatible. But God's arrangement is that we are compatible with each other so that this three-way exchange is possible. But the question is, should we allow that? Or is it okay for that to happen? Yeah, so here you see that on one extreme is the buying and selling organs in Iran. The other extreme in Taiwan, it used to be that you can't even donate outside your family. And then, but here you have these exchanges or swaps. Is that okay? Because this is an in-person class, I can even ask you guys. So how many of you think swaps are okay? So swaps between two couples. A lot of you think it's okay. What about three-way exchange? Okay, so some of you, but some of you not. Okay, if you think three-way exchange, how about this? Chain donation. So you have an altruistic donor. When he or she donates to the first recipient, this recipient's relative donates to a second recipient, and then the second recipient, in this case brother, donates to a third person. So you have a chain reaction. Is that okay? And remember, here you will actually create this. I mean, if you know that you're going to create a chain reaction, this would actually increase your willingness to donate. Because you know that, oh, so if I donate my kidney, well, 10 other people will be donating their kidney and changing 11 families. So is that okay? But remember, for the kidney swap and three-way exchange, those closed loops, those improvements are Pareto improvements. Because if you prevent this to happen, then I could have saved your wife's life, and you could have saved my wife's life, but it's prevented to happen. So those swaps are Pareto improvements. Everybody's better off. However, for kidney chains, if the altruistic donor is going to donate anyway, so there is one person that could be losing. It's the person who was on the top of the waiting list. Because if this altruistic donor did not donate to create this chain reaction, the kidney would go to the first person on the waiting list that's waiting there. But to create a chain reaction, we are making some value judgments that, oh, so to trigger this chain reaction, this gain is better than the loss of whoever's on the top of the waiting list who's waiting. Okay, so how many of you think kidney exchange is okay? So now you see that there are fewer people. Let me give you a real-world example. 60 lives, 30 kidneys. So this was in the New York Times. The first person, so Rick on the upper left, he donated a kidney, triggering this chain reaction of 30 kidneys being donated. And I think back then he said that, I think I'm richer than Donald Trump. All right, so here you see that these kidney exchanges, this is what we call market design. And this is the prize-winning idea in 2012. Al Roth, who's now in Stanford, when he was in Harvard, he was in charge of designing these kidney matching systems to find these possibilities of kidney swaps, kidney chains, and to actually implement them. Talking about this, it is easy, but to really build up a registry and find the correct algorithm to find all these possibilities. And remember, I mean, if you think of 30 transplants, you have to do it almost all at once. You need 30 transplant teams of doctors and nurses and hospitals. And what you also need is the transportation of these organs, because once you donate, you need to send it to the next place to do this. In Taiwan, it's much easier because everything is close to each other. When this happened, that showed up in the New York Times, you literally need a cross-continental flight to deliver all these organs. So it's a big task. Anyway, so this is my photo with Al when he was the keynote speaker right after he won. And there's my organ donation card, so if you are interested. But this gives you an idea that even going beyond the textbook, even without prices, you could still do market design and try to realize gains from trade. And of course, different designs may or may not be acceptable. I'm very happy to report that Taiwan has just started to consider kidney swaps. They just changed the law that you are allowed to donate in exchange that your family member will move to the top of the list to receive an organ donation. Even Taiwan has moved towards this direction. But of course, it really depends on what people think is okay or not okay. But I do want to say that even if it's not okay to buy and sell organs, we're not like Iran. But there is still a lot of room for market design in order to realize gains from trade. And here, when we talk about organ donation, it's really life-changing gains. It's not just like gaining $1 or not. So that's enough for this. I really appreciate the textbook that it actually goes beyond the standard model to talk about, like, say, organ donation. Yeah, but to summarize this chapter, we talked about consumer surplus and producer surplus. This is how we evaluate how good or how bad the market is performing. And then we define efficiency as maximizing total surplus, or the sum of consumer surplus and producer surplus. And the market equilibrium maximizes this total surplus. And so that, in that sense, we think that markets are a good way to allocate resources. But we also note that there could be market failure when that's not the case, especially when there's market power or when there's externalities. We'll be talking about externalities in the next lecture. All right, so here's my one-page summary. So consumer surplus plus producer surplus, that's total surplus. This is what's maximized in equilibrium. That's why economists love the market. But even in this case, there is this problem of efficiency versus equality, because we are using one value judgment instead of another. And so here's the homework from the textbook, Chapter 7. And here is additional questions. Okay, true or false? If consumers buy 1,000 heads of lettuce per week, and if the price of lettuce falls by $1 per head, then consumer surplus will increase by $1,000. How many of you think this is true? Nobody. How many of you think this is false? Some of you. How many of you are not sure? It's okay to be not sure. Yeah, okay. But yeah, that's the whole point for this additional question. So you should think carefully about this statement and then say, oh, I think it's true because of what reason, or I think it's false for what reason. Okay, and then here's the additional homework. That's the past midterms.